Hey vinyl friends and vinyl community, it's Brian from Brian's Vinyl Records, and I am super excited about this video today. So Melinda Murphy did a ranking of her favorite band, Van Halen, on her channel recently, and it got me thinking it'd be kind of fun to try and do that with my favorite band, AC/DC. So I sat there and I looked at the albums and I rearranged them over and over and over again, and well, for now, I think I have my list. It was not as easy as you would think. I mean, when they're your favorite band, you pretty much like everything they've done. And so it was a tough case. Couple ground rules before we get started. I did not include the Australian original albums, High Voltage or TNT. And the reason is that TNT basically became the bare bones of what would become High Voltage in the United States and Europe. And this one was piecemealed together as another release, which we'll get to as well. So I figured I would leave those out of the conversation. I also did not include any of the live albums, which are If You Want Blood, You've Got It, AC/DC Live, and AC/DC Live at River Platte. Now, of course, there are tons of live AC/DC stuff out there, but those are the official releases on vinyl and whatnot. Also, I did not include Iron Man 2 as a soundtrack. Number one, I don't have it on vinyl, but also it's just a kind of compilation for a movie soundtrack, so I did not include that as well. However, I did include Who Made Who on here because it has a nice original tune on it. It has 3 original songs on it, so I did include it in here. I did hem and haw over that one, though, on whether to include it or not, but I did include it. Many people look at it as a studio album for AC/DC, even though it is mostly a compilation and a soundtrack for Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive. With that said, let's go ahead and get started with the list as I have it currently. In at number 18 is this one here. This is 74 Jailbreak. It was released in the United States in 1984 and really was taking the songs that weren't put out on the international version of High Voltage and kind of putting them in here. Also includes the song Jailbreak, which is originally found on the album Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, but for some reason was removed from the United States version of Dirty Deeds and didn't come out until it was on here. This is fine. It's a short EP. I believe it's 5 or 6 songs, and you know, it's okay. It's not my favorite. Jailbreak is a great song, but as far as this goes, this is an original. And what I'm trying to do with the AC/DC is I'm trying to get both an original press, not necessarily has to be the actual original press, but an early pressing, and also the remastered pressing. This is one I haven't gotten a remastered pressing on, only because it's an EP and they're charging full price on it for an album. So I haven't been able to find one yet for cheap enough for me to pay the money for. But either way, this is 18 for me. I just don't listen to it very often. Yeah, it just doesn't get a lot of turntable play. Number 17, the aforementioned Who Made Who. Again, I waffled over whether or not to include this or not, but basically this is just a compilation of different songs that they've done with Who Made Who, which is an absolutely fantastic song, a great tune. So in all, the other 2 originals on here are instrumentals. It's still a fun album to take out and listen to from time to time. What I do like about this album is if you listen to the cassette-only version, the CD and the vinyl are not the same, but the cassette version has a different version of Shake Your Foundations on it. Shake Your Foundations is a song off the album Fly on the Wall, and everyone knows it with the intro having the drum beat. On the cassette version of Who Made Who, you get the intro without that drum beat, and it's kind of cool. So I wish they would have kept that for the CD and the vinyl versions as well. In at number 16, Black Ice. Now, this is a fine album. There's a lot of really great songs on here. I think the problem with this one for me has always been that it is just too long. There are 15 songs on this album, and I think if they would have removed 4 or 5 of those tracks, this would have been a much higher ranked album for me. There's just some filler on here that didn't really It wasn't needed. They could have used it later or saved it for later. So for that reason, this always is one that I don't play very often because I mean, it is really long for an AC/DC album. This is, I think, around 50 minutes, and that's incredible. But still good. I did see them finally on this tour. That was the first time I ever got to see them live. It was also Malcolm Young's last album with the band and last tour with the band. So that's kind of tragic. But again, just one I don't pull out very often. I do like it, and I will spin it from time to time. But like I said, I think it just suffers from being too many tracks on here. Cut it down to 10 or 11 tracks, and this could have been a classic for them. So Black Ice, number 16. At number 15, Stiff Upper Lip. So this came out in, I believe it was 90s, gosh, might have been 2000. 2000. So this one came out after a good 5-year break between albums, and that would actually become the normal as we moved through the 90s into the 2000s. But really excited about this when it came out. Loved the lead title track, Stiff Upper Lip. Was a great tune. But overall, this is a different album for them. Not your classic AC/DC sound. They did get into a little more bluesy, jazzy type sounds in this, I guess. I don't know if you really want to say that for AC/DC, but it was just different from what they had been putting out. And I'm not a big fan of the whole album as a whole. I think there's some great tunes on here, and I think this is a really good album. But for me, it ranks down there pretty low because I just don't listen to it that often outside the title track. And so, yeah, that's where that one falls. Up next in at number 14 is High Voltage. So now a lot of people absolutely love this album, and it is an absolutely great album. But for me, it's just one of those that I don't spin as often as some of the other ones. So for that reason, I had to put it down a little lower in my list. Some really good stuff on here. Long Way to the Top, If You Want to Rock and Roll, the title track, High Voltage, TNT, all staple. Those are staples of the live show. The Jack is one of my least favorite AC/DC songs of all time, especially the live version. I think it's absolutely horrendous. Rock and Roll Singer is a great one. Livewire is an absolutely fantastic tune. And that one, they used to open when Bon Scott was around. They'd open the shows with that song, and it was perfect for an opening song on a tour. So a good album, just not listened to as often as some of the others. In at number 13, this is Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. This is the Australian cover, which I absolutely love, and the original track listing, which includes the song Jailbreak. On the American and European version, we got this cover here, and on the American version, they replaced Jailbreak with Rocker, and, you know, Rocker's on another album that didn't need to really be on this one as well. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Problem Child is also on here. No, Problem Child is the one, not Rocker. Problem Child is on another album and didn't need to be included on this one. So I picked this up real happy too, because I got this for $40. It's an import, so it costs a little more. But now I've seen it twice, actually 3 times in the wild now, and it's up around the $80 to $90 range now. So I picked it up at just the right time this past record store day, one of the drops, and super happy I did. So Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Gosh, classic songs on here. Dirty Deeds obviously is one of them. Ain't No Fun Waiting Around to Be a Millionaire is a great song. Squealer is a fantastic song. Everybody knows the song Big Balls. Just overall, this is a really, really good album. So that is where that ranks. In at number 12, Ballbreaker. I love this album for the most part. I think it's a solid album. This came out in 1995 or 6. I can't quite remember. But when I think it's 95. And when this came out, I was a senior in high school and a huge AC/DC fan at that point. I had just gotten into AC/DC around the Razor's Edge time, and so they hadn't put really anything other than the live album out since I had become a fan. And so when this came out, it was a huge deal, and I absolutely just think this is a great album. There's some really kick-ass tracks. Hard as a Rock is the lead-in song on this album, and it's absolutely fantastic. Ballbreaker is the title track. Burnin' Alive is really good. There's just some really good stuff on here. And then there's some stuff that was a little cringeworthy on here. The Führer, not a great tune. I never really got into Hail Caesar on this one either. That one was completely made so that it could be a sing-along at a concert, and it just doesn't do anything for me. So that's where that stands. But a really good album, and always have loved that one. In at number 11, this is a great one. Blow Up Your Video. So people rag on this one a lot, and the reason is the production is terrible. I don't know what they were doing in Vancouver when they recorded this one, but the production on it is just awful. It sounds like Brian Johnson's stuck in a reverb chamber the whole time, and it is not the best sounding album, but I think the songs on here are really, really good. Two's Up is fantastic. Go Zone's fantastic. That's the Way I Want to Rock and Roll, Heat Seeker. There's some really, really good stuff on this album, and it's really a shame that they couldn't, produce it better and mix it better and make it sound better, because it's a good album, and I think if they had the right production on this, this would be a classic of theirs for sure. So love this album, but suffers from bad production. So Blow Up Your Video in at number 11. Top 10, we start with Rock or Bust. This came out 2014, I believe. Fantastic album. I really, really loved it when it came out. First album to feature Stevie Young on guitars. Took over for his uncle Malcolm after Malcolm had gotten dementia. And so it was different to hear that. But he has that classic sound. He uses Malcolm's same guitars. And it turned out absolutely fantastic. I was thrilled beyond belief when this came out. It's nice. It's pretty short. I think it's just over 35 minutes long in length. So it's not an endeavor to listen to. And I think almost every song on here is wonderful. I really, really enjoy this album. So this was a hit for me when it came out. I did go and see them with my buddy Nate in Fargo when they played on this tour. And it just so happened to be, I think, 3 or 4 shows away from when Brian Johnson left the band because of ear problems. So we luckily were one of the last cities to see Brian Johnson in AC/DC at the time, even for now, last ones to see him perform live with AC/DC before Axl Rose took over. Good album though, I really enjoy it. In at number 9, Flick of the Switch. Another one. After the polished albums Highway to Hell, Back in Black, and For Those About to Rock, We Salute You, AC/DC decided to go back to their classic sound and try to get more raw and powerful in their production. Success, I would say, on this one. This is definitely a lot rawer sounding album. It's got a good punch to it, and I really, really like that part of it. People didn't like it because it didn't sound as polished as their last 3 albums did, but that was the point. They wanted it to sound, more powerful. This was about power on this album. Rising Power, a song. Flick of the Switch, a song. Guns for Hire, a song. Great on here. Just a really, really solid album. And this is, I believe, one of the last albums where Brian Johnson actually contributed lyrics to in the band. After this, I believe Malcolm and Angus would take over all songwriting for the band. But a really, really good album. And I think it sounds great. I like the rawness of this album. And so, yeah. Flick of the Switch. Great stuff. In at number 8, Highway to Hell. Great album. First album they did with Mutt Lange. Unfortunately, the very last album that they did with Bon Scott on vocals. Unfortunately, he would pass away before they could get in the studio to record what would become Back in Black. But this is a fantastic album. This is well produced. Now, from everything they'd done up until this point, which was much more raw and power driven, this was much more streamlined, produced, and radio friendly, I would say. It produced many hits off here, Highway to Hell being the biggest one. Girls Got Rhythm still played every once in a while live. Let's see what else. Walk All Over You, Touch Too Much. Good stuff. Just a really good album. And really showcased what they could do songwriting wise. It's unfortunate that Bon didn't make it to the next album, but this was a great way to send him off. Just a phenomenal album. Mutt Lange did a great job with these guys. In at number 7, AC/DC's Fly on the Wall. Another one where people rag on it because of production, and again, I understand. However, I will say that listening to it on vinyl, it doesn't sound so bad. It actually sounds really good, and I think that they just did a really poor transfer to CD and cassette that really kind of hurt it. But as far as I'm concerned, this is a fantastic album. I really enjoyed it. It's one of my favorites to listen to. And Shake Your Foundation, Sink the Pink, First Blood, great tunes, Fly on the Wall, the title track, Danger, Playing with Girls, just all around. I absolutely love this album. It's really good. And I think if you were to give it a shot on vinyl, you'd be pleasantly surprised at how well it sounds on this media. All right, in at number 6, the brand new album Power Up. This is an absolute scorching album. And I know some people might not like that I put it so high in the list above some classics, but I love this album. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's so good. And I've listened to it over and over again, and I've even bought multiple copies of this album on vinyl so I can get different colors, which is weird. I don't typically do that. But I like it. I think they did it. I think they knocked it out of the park with this album. I don't know if there's a single song on here I don't like. I like everything on here. I think it's just absolutely fantastic. So I think it deserves to be up here, just outside the top 5 for me. And at number 6, just awesome. Highly recommend it if you haven't given it a listen. Top 5, here we go. We start with For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. Just a killer album. This one doesn't get enough due, I don't think. And the reason is because after Back in Black, it's hard to follow up something that was such a success like that was. This was on par with Back in Black, I think. I don't think it's much far off as far as content and album itself. I think it's a great album. It's got some killer songs on it. I really enjoy listening to it a lot. And, it's the final album that they did with Mutt Lange at the helm. And it sounds absolutely spectacular. Songs on here I love. For Those About to Rock is a classic. It's always closing out shows now. But you got songs like Evil Walks, Put the Finger on You, Let's Get It Up, Inject the Venom, Snowballed. Just really, really good stuff on here. Highly, highly recommend this album. And it deserves definitely to be in my top 5 for AC/DC albums. In at number 4, Let There Be Rock. Yes, this is a fabulous album. Power, straight edge, just in your face rock and roll right here. Songs like Let There Be Rock, the title track. Dog Eat Dog is just an absolutely fantastic. Go Down is really good. Bad Boy Boogie is really good. Just this album is just fantastic from top to bottom. And so it definitely deserves to be my number 4 AC/DC album. Highly recommend this one. Let's see here. I think this also includes Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, Whole Lotta Rosie, and one of my personal favorite AC/DC songs, a deep cut called Overdose. Just a really, really good song. Highly recommended. Let There Be Rock in at number 4. At number 3 for me, Back in Black. This is a classic. So, nope, not number 1 for me. Number 3. I love this album, and I think it's from top to bottom very good, and it's just not in my top 2. And when I get to my top 2, I'll explain. This is a fantastic album. Obviously, one of the top-selling albums of all time. Best heavy metal album, hard rock album of all time as far as sales go, and rightly so. It's filled with classic hits. Back in Black, Hell's Bells, You Shook Me All Night Long. It just filled with stuff. One of my personal favorites, Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution, is just a really, really good song. Let me put my love into you, babe. That's a great tune. Just all over, classic after classic on this. You can put this on and just enjoy it from top to bottom. Really good. AC/DC, number 3. So what beats Back in Black? Well, this was my first AC/DC album, and I absolutely love it. This is The Razor's Edge. Came out in 1990, and Thunderstruck was an instant classic off of this one. But man, it's the deep tracks in here I think that make it so good. Obviously, Money Talks is a big hit for them, but things like the title track, Razor's Edge, just so good. Mistress for Christmas is a very, very underrated song, and I think one of the best. Shot of Love is fun. Got You by the Balls. Are You Ready is just amazing. Goodbye and Good Riddance to Bad Luck. This thing is awesome. I listened to this so much as a middle schooler and then a high schooler. It was just the soundtrack to those days for me. And so for that reason, sentimental or not, this is my number 2 AC/DC album. So that leaves one left. In at number 1, I think this is a consensus among a lot of AC/DC fans. Poweredge. Just an absolutely great album. Not much else I can say on this one. It's got such great stuff on here. Let's see. We've got Rock and Roll Damnation. Funny thing about Rock and Roll Damnation is that was a last-minute add to the album because the label had said that they didn't have a song on here that they could use for radio, and they needed something for radio. So they wrote that in like 30 minutes and laid it down and gave it to them. It wasn't even supposed to be on the album, which I think is hilarious. It's a great tune, though. You got Down Payment Blues, phenomenal. Give Me a Bullet, Riff Raff is great. Sin City, What's Next to the Moon, Gone Shootin' is one of my all-time favorites. Kicked in the Teeth and Up to My Neck in You. Every song on here is absolutely fantastic, and I love listening to this album. I think it's absolutely 100% their best album that they ever did, and that's why it's my number 1 favorite album. A lot of times when I'm reaching for AC/DC, this is one I almost always pull out because it's just so good. And I have to stop myself from listening to it constantly and pull out something else because otherwise I just sit and listen to this all day. And while that would be fun, I do like to spread my AC/DC love because they are my favorite band and I love pretty much everything they've done. So, number 1, Poweredge. Phenomenal album. Love it. I hope that you enjoyed this list, and I'd love to hear your comments on which albums you think that I put too high maybe, or maybe too low. Let me know your thoughts on AC/DC albums and your rankings. I know a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on their favorite AC/DC. I've heard people say Flick of the Switch. I've heard people say Fly on the Wall. Love it. That's awesome. Those are not albums you usually hear as the top AC/DC album. High Voltage, a lot of people love that High Voltage album, that first one. Can't fault you there. So there's my list. Quickly run down it again. Number 18, Jailbreak. Then Who Made Who, Black Ice, Stiff Upper Lip, High Voltage, Dirty Deeds, Ball Breaker, Blow Up Your Video, Rock or Bust, Flick of the Switch, Highway to Hell, Fly on the Wall, Power Up, For Those About to Rock, We Salute You, Let There Be Rock, Back in Black, Razor's Edge, and Poweredge. That's my list. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below. Love to hear your thoughts on my list. Maybe what you would put in your number 1. Give me your top 5. What are your top 5 AC/DC albums? Love to hear it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, keep spinning, battle friends.